Our strategy is to suppress the virus, protecting the economy, education, and the NHS until a vaccine can make us safe. People out of work in the UK could hit 4 million in the coming month. It's as furlough is due at the end of October. Family Work Pension Secretary Reynolds is worried. So it's going to be honest, hate something.
Put yourself on mute.
Good afternoon, Maurice. Can I help you? No, it's not. It's Kim. Yeah, more. Tina, right. Westcliff.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this one-to-one iPad webinar hosted by ourselves at Hambleton Primary Academy. Just a quick welcome to say thank you for coming on today in quite sort of strange times. Firstly, can I just ask before we begin, can you make sure, firstly, number one, that your microphone is switched off, and number two, you do have your camera off as well. There will be an opportunity at the end of the webinar for questions further to this. If you look on your tab, there is also a chat pane, and if you do wish to add anything to the chat pane, we hopefully can answer those questions at the end. So once again, please just make sure your microphones and your cameras are muted. Okay, thank you very much. So this is our one-to-one iPad meeting today, and what we are going to discuss today is going to be three different things. Number one is going to be all about Mrs. Wood's going to give a warm welcome, and what she's going to do is she's going to discuss the history behind having a one-to-one iPad device set up in our school and the reasons behind that as well. Secondly, I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about why do we need tech within our school? Why do we use it at the moment? And then finally, Louise, our business manager at the school, she's going to talk about how it's financed and the next steps towards that as well. Just once again, please, if your microphone is on, can you please make sure you do mute your microphone? Thank you very much. Okay, so firstly, I am going to hand over to our head teacher, who is Mrs. Wood, and she will discuss everything that I just talked about before. Mrs. Wood, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. This is a very strange way of doing this afternoon, but welcome. Hopefully you'll get all the information you need, and like Mr. Goldie said, if you want to ask any questions at the end, then you must do so. I just really wanted to come on just to explain, really, for those of you who haven't joined the scheme before, basically what the scheme is about, and also a little bit of information about why we started the scheme in the first place. So we were just working out it was over 10 years ago now, the funding for technology in schools ceased. We used to have quite a large part of funding for technology, and that ceased at the time. And we thought of, as a school, we're always sort of forward thinking, and we thought we need something in place that enables us to keep up to date with technology and make sure that the children always have technology that's modern, that's new. And we looked into various different ways of doing that. The way that we decided to go with in the end was with the Learning Foundation. And they are a charity which are there basically to provide technology for children, no matter their backgrounds, just basically so that every child has technology at their fingertips, basically. And this is the route we decided to go down. Mrs. Shaw will explain a little bit more about how the funding works and how that all works. But what that means is, and ultimately your child then has a device that they can use, that they get for those 3 years. It can be renewed after that, but they get a device that's up to date, the latest model, that they can use in class. Mrs. Shaw will also talk about the fact that there are ways of getting, you might not always be the cheapest option. You may be able to personally find devices yourselves that are cheap, and that's fine too. But it's just an option for you that's available, so the children can have that technology. I think more than ever at the minute, due to the current situation, I think it's become more pertinent and more useful, and it means that the children can carry on that learning at home. And I think we found over lockdown that, you know, we were ahead of the game really, because it meant that all children had access to devices. And also if they didn't have, we've got the devices in school which we can lend to the children, so that everybody had technology at home and could carry on the learning in the best way possible. I think basically Mr. Goldie will sort of explain the sorts of things we do with the technology and the ways in which we use it in school. It's not to take over all the things that we do normally, it's just there to enhance the learning further. You know, it's still really important that they still learn to handwrite properly and do all the things that you would expect, but it's supposed to be there as a tool to improve their learning, which we definitely think it has. And he will talk a little bit about the Google Classroom and how that works and why that's so important, especially at this moment in time. I think, you know, we're very aware that we could be in a situation whereby bubbles go home, and what we want to ensure is that the children continue the learning the best way possible. If you decide it's not what you want to do, it's not a problem either. Like I say, we have devices in school that the children can borrow. Certainly if you're God forbid we're not in a lockdown situation again, but if we are, there are devices they can have and borrow at home, and they wouldn't be without. We'd always make sure they've got a device if you choose not to, but this is just so you know there's an option there if you want to take us up on it. So Mr. Goldie, is it you next or Mrs. Shaw?
It is. I will just take over from there. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wood. And I'm just going to quickly elaborate on some of the things that Mrs. Wood has just discussed there and sort of talk about exactly why we do need the devices at the moment. We are in the middle of what we call a pandemic. And one thing within school, which is a bit of a must at the moment, is technology. Whether you love it or you hate it, this is the sort of path that we've had to go down now. Not just us, but all the other educational establishments throughout the world are really starting to take this on board. You know, learning has now changed forever. We use it every day. And even the government have said to us at the end of August, they've said to every school, you need to have a remote learning strategy in place in the, you know, if the worst case scenario does happen, that bubbles do have to go home. So we need to be on our toes. And one thing we have put in place here at Hambleton is this remote learning strategy where we use Google Classroom within class. And if needs be, if that bubble does break down and does have to go and self-isolate at home, we can, at the flick of a switch, we can turn that onto a remote learning strategy and send all the work straight home. And some of you have started to notice as well the homework. Why is all our homework now quite remotely and paperless? It's for that main reason, that we get children familiar with how everything does look online, and it does go that way. But as Mrs. Wood said before, you know, it's not just all about remote learning. It's this new hybrid learning way that we put traditional methods of teaching in. We still use a whiteboard in school, but adopt it as well with this new remote learning strategy. And that now brings me back to iPads. iPads are absolutely fundamental in school. We use them for so many things. Just speaking to the Key Stage 1 staff today, and you parents as well, who are primarily children from Key Stage 1, this is year 1 and year 2, about the abundance of apps that you are going to need to use. You're going to have to use things like the phonics apps. We've got Spelling Shed, there's a spag.com app, there's Spelladrome, there's Google Earth, there's Pages, Pitcollage, Google Classroom. All of those apps that I've quickly rolled off there, we will be sending out as a list through parent mail for you as well. It is really important, I believe, in the current climate that we try and get our children as device savvy as possible and do have a device in school. Does it mean that you need to have a device? You need to actually sign up for this? Well, absolutely not. No. We've already done an audit around all the classrooms, and for those children who do not have an access to a device, very discreetly we put a strategy in place where we will provide extra iPads in school. And further to what Mrs. Wood was saying before, that we will also ensure that there are enough devices within school, laptops, etc., that can be used as well. We also have a bring your own device policy, and they can also bring their own devices in as long as we know they are, and we can set them up on our own Wi-Fi. Okay. What do we use them for? Well, we use them in English, we use them in maths, we use them in topic, we use them for everything at the moment. And it's absolutely of paramount importance that, you know, if you can get your child a device to use, you know, we would sort of suggest we would push that forward. What apps will you need? We will send out a list of apps at a later date. These would usually get sent out on a yearly basis anyway, and we'll send out usually 3 lists: your early years list, a key stage 1 list, and then a key stage 2 list. And now finally, I'm going to move on to the final part of our webinar today. I'm going to pass you over to Mrs. Shaw, and Mrs. Shaw now will speak to you regarding finance and setup. Okay, over to you, Mrs. Shaw. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Goldie. First time I've ever done this, so we'll give it a whirl. The premise of the scheme, the way it works, is we lease the devices from a company, and the scheme is financed through an establishment called the Learning Foundation. They have the same ethos as us, as mentioned by Mrs. Wood. You will sign up on there via initial sign up and a link to make financial contributions to our scheme. We ask for a minimum donation of, it's £14.50 per month per child to make the scheme viable. It's taken in by direct debit over 36 months. And if you have siblings who are currently on one of our other schemes that are running, they're obviously reduced contributions, like child 2 is £12, child 3 is £9, depending on how many children you have. We also ask that you click the claiming gift aid box, because that enables us to claim gift aid. It makes our scheme more sustainable. There's a link that we'll forward out to you if you send the form back to say that you're interested, and you will go on the Learning Foundation's page and sign up via that. It asks for all your details, obviously, because we don't keep that, they do. They manage the data on our behalf. The devices are covered for accidental damage and also for a theft. You would need a crime number though if you were reporting a theft. Unfortunately, they're not covered just for lost devices. We do have a Find My iPad option on there, which is quite useful. That sometimes they are actually still in school somewhere, maybe in a tray. The device also comes with a screen protector and a case, which has to be kept on at all times because of the insurance. We also supply a £25 iTunes voucher. It just enables us to set it up with a school email and a password, and on our web filtering service. And then if a password is forgotten, say for example, it makes it easier for us to be able to access the account, because if you have to go through Apple, they're very secure, and it's very difficult because you have to go back and find the initial invoice to prove that you've actually bought them. So we like to do that, and it also means that parents don't have to put their card details in, which is another boon. You can just set it up with the voucher. You don't actually have to put your details in, which means that there's no accidental in-app purchases, which I know has happened in the past. You would set up these contributions by direct debit. They would come directly out of your bank account. They would go to the Learning Foundation. They would collect them on our behalf with gift aid, and then they forward those payments back to us. After the final direct debit payment, the transfer of ownership then goes to you and the device will become yours. Sometimes schemes run a smaller payment and then a larger final payment. We think it's easier to do the same payment throughout. Just makes it, parents then know how much is going to be coming out, and it just makes it a little bit easier. So once the final payment has come out after 3 years, the device then becomes yours, and you're then responsible for, still on our web filtering, but it would still be your responsibility as regards insurance. And they just do need to be insured if they're in school, and obviously it makes sense to still be in the case. What normally happens is if they are damaged, quite often it's the screen protector. If they are damaged in any way, we or I send them back via the CompuCover, who is our insurers, and they will come and collect the device, take it, either repair it and then send another one. You can have up to 2 devices a year. Obviously, we do ask that you take care of them, because the more claims we make, the more expensive the insurance would be, and the parental donations may have to go up. But once the scheme donation amount is set, it remains the same for 3 years. So I think that's it for me. I can't think of anything else. I'm sure if you have any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shaw. Thank you. So just to the final part of our device, one-to-one iPad device meeting today. This is an opportunity for questions. So if you are on this webinar today and you do have any questions, this is your opportunity now to come off mute and ask myself, Mr. Shaw or Mrs. Wood, any questions that you may have. Thank you. Okay, that's brilliant. There's going to be no questions today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope our webinar regarding the iPad device meeting has been informative. If you do have any concerns or you do have any further queries, please feel free to ring up the school office, and we will we'll endeavour to get that information out to you as soon as possible. Thank you for your time. Thanks for now.